All right, we're going to get into Genesis, and we're going to talk about. It's sort of neat because, quite frankly, we talked about Abraham. We skipped over Jacob, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a thumbnail history of Jacob, and but we're going to go into Joseph and all the things about him. And you know, the nice thing is we tend to do these, and I'll call it sound bites. You know, we'll get a story every now and then, you know, maybe in a sermon or something like that, and do that. But we really don't get to know these guys as well as we should. So this is a good series, just like the Abraham one was. And so I'm sort of excited about it. So hopefully you'll see something, get something out of it. We just last week we just did Obadiah, just as in relation to quite frankly, it was related to Martin Luther King holiday. But Obadiah is the first book of prophets. I like the Jewish history of him being Edomite, converted to Judaism, so that he, you know, and about that they felt like that he was the one that had hid the prophets and had, you know, spent all of his money taking care of them, feeding them, you know, during the days of Ahab. So it's neat. So he had, I'll call it, rights to be able to condemn the Edomites because he was from them before, and he condemned them for not helping their family, you know, when Judah was attacked, and for basically even piling on and coming in to do that. So, but the story was more, you know, I wanted you to hear the history just so that you can understand it, because we don't ever do that history. And we never know, you know, we always looked at Petra just as a neat picture, you know, from Indiana Jones, but we never really knew that the Edomites had set it up originally. So it's one of those things that, you know, they were teaching us that we needed to start learning how to act and show God's love for people. And that we need to look at it from a different angle. We need to look for people, not open our eyes to find people that are being mistreated, because too many times we're callous, our eyes are sort of closed to mistreatment. So we need to realize that, learn empathy versus indifference, go from being passive to active, find people to help, first give verbal support, then call to action, get others involved, and do something to make a change in those kinds of things that we're seeing around us. Because there's plenty of them, and quite a bit lately. You know, whether it's racism or whether it is against the poor, you know, they're taking a big hit, and the church is standing by, and in some cases, quite frankly, piling on, which is the things that we've got to speak up about, we've got to do things about. So that was a neat lesson for us to do that. This week, we're going to talk about who's hurt us. Now, sometime in our life, somebody may have hurt you. Has it been a friend, a family member, another relative, maybe, a spouse or an ex-spouse, or even the church? I mean, you've seen it where people in church said something to hurt other people. You know, we used to joke about it, you know, the bless your dear heart kind of thing. You know, the indifferent kind of a statement that people would make condoning others, condemning something that happens. What's the reason for the hurt? What kind of betrayal was it? Someone being mean, a word being spoken, and quite frankly, that's, you know, words and us taking offense on words fairly quickly. Somebody says something without thinking, which tends to happen a lot. We say things without thinking. Hopefully we're smart enough to go apologize very quickly for it and do that. Why does those kind of things hurt so much?
Because you trust them.
You trust them, okay? You just never
You're
expect
vulnerable.
that. Go ahead.
Usually if it's somebody that you're close to, which is the only reason it really hurts, is you've made yourself vulnerable to them. You've opened yourself up to them. And that distrust or that betrayal violates that trust and confidence and openness that you've created with them in a relationship.
Okay. Well, sometimes it's because we're a little bit too self-centered. We take offense at things. Somebody could be sort of kidding us or joking with us. You've seen people take offense at your friend making a comment. No, I'm not like that. What do you mean? I'm not like that.
Sometimes it's baggage we carry from past hurts
Yeah. Yeah.
that we overreact to a situation because of that.
That's the way it is with sarcasm. We joke around and use sarcasm until somebody, it just goes too far and somebody gets offended.
Yeah. The first one seems okay.
Yeah.
But then the next guy's got to one up it. And then, especially with little kids around the table, it's funny when I was visiting them around Christmas, is when they do it, everybody then pile on that one individual, Yeah. So yeah, you get those kind of things. So it tends to start out okay, then it starts hurting because we're a little self-centered. And we think we're above problems too, quite frankly. How dare them offend me? Okay. Should it bother us? Should something bother us? Depends on what it is. Okay.
Only if we're Democrats.
On your Democrats. Yeah. Oh no.
Back at you.
If you were offended by that statement.
Just go ahead and leave.
I'm sorry, that took you off.
No, I think that in reality, there's been a lot of people offended by Republicans and Democrats on different aspects. So I was reading something yesterday about how hard it is to be the leader of either party nowadays, because you just don't realize how much baggage there is within a party. Reading it on the Republican thing, the Freedom Caucus is just, he's got that third rail he's got to deal with to keep the Freedom Caucus from going crazy on him. And, so it's those kind of things that you do. And the Democrats have the same thing. They've got the far left. And it's just keeping a party together is a lot harder than it ever was in the past.
Plus the party changed.
Yeah.
I grew up as a Democrat, and then they became Republicans, and the Republicans became what Democrats used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So can God be at work in these situations?
I hope so.
In any of the situations we're talking about, God is in charge. He's probably working. Okay. But
He still allows us free will, though.
He allows us free will, but we're not given a pass on trials and tribulations. So just because you accepted Christ doesn't mean somebody's not going to say something bad about you. Doesn't mean you're not going to have that mother-in-law issue. Doesn't mean you're going to have whatever. You know what I mean? It's those kind of things are going to happen. That doesn't mean God's in control. It means you got to learn how to handle things. Okay. That's what the lesson's about. We're going to talk about the biggest patent place of all. You got Jacob. He goes out and he serves Laban for 7 years. He goes to his bridal chamber. Don't know till the next day that he's gotten swapped. He's got Leah instead. So he goes to Laban, says something about it. He said, well, it's just our custom. You gotta marry the oldest first, and wait till after the end of the thing, and you give me 7 more years, you can have Rachel. Yeah. And so after 7 days, he gave him Rachel. So now he's for 14 years, he served for Rachel basically. Okay. So at 84, he's 84 when he married Leah. Okay. just a young spring chicken. And he's got to work 7 more years there. Okay, so an 84-year-old guy that's got another 7 years. So let's say that's 40 or 50 in today's years, because he ended up living to be, I think, 130. Okay, so so he loved Rachel more than Leah. Worked 14 years for her. Leah. God opened Leah's womb and had 4 kids. Rachel remained barren, so Rachel, decided, let's do the same thing that Abraham did and just give him my handmaid. So Bilhah gave him, and he had 2 kids, Dan and Naphtali. Then he said, it's funny. He said Leah had a pause in childbirth, so she gave him her handmaid. The pause could only be a year at the most. When I tell you the difference in time, all these kids, these first 12 are born over 7 years. Okay, so whatever pause she had the 4. She had to have maybe a year pause, and then she had the other 2. Okay. Now, so this is Peyton Place more than you've ever seen Peyton Place. Okay, he's done that. And Leah. Finally, after all this, I said Leah became fertile again and had the 3, more, which was the Issachar and Zebulon and Dinah, the only girl. Okay, and then Rachel was finally remembered, and she had Joseph before they moved. Okay, so all of that's during the 7 years. Those 12 were born. And it's 12 counting Dinah. Okay, now. Benjamin, we're going to talk about a little later. Benjamin's not born till later. And there's a little bit of discussion over when he was born, something like that. So this is a bad environment. He obviously had a preference on wives. He took on the cultural polygamy, and kids were just popping out everywhere. In 7 years, he's had 12 kids popping. So, a lot of jealousy between wives, a lot of preferential treatment on wives. Kids getting blatant preferential treatment, jealousy with the kids, dad at this point, because dad doesn't have Joseph till he's 91. Okay. He's and a little bit later, we're going to find out that he says he had him in his old age. So a lot of mistakes that are flowing down to the kids. Okay. Not managing very well. So that's the situation. So in that situation, all these kids have got to learn how to work together. Okay. I put that in the right place. I'll get back to that in a minute. So let's read the first set of scriptures here.
Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. These are the family records of Jacob. At 17 years of age, Joseph tended sheep with his brothers. The young man was working with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than his other sons because Joseph was a son born to him in his old age, and he made a long-sleeved robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not bring themselves to speak peaceably to him. Then Joseph had a dream. When he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more.
Okay. So where did Jacob live?
The land of Canaan.
Land of Canaan. Well, I'm going to move these over for just a second so y'all can see the thing. At this point, what he did is you remember he's up with Laban that's up off the top of the map before. He came down, he was right down, where is it? Bethel, excuse me. I'm trying to write it down. But he was at Bethel. He went and he sacrificed there. Then he started coming back up. Rachel went into labor right when they were near to Bethlehem. And she died in birth of Benjamin there, okay? You know, and then he moved on up to Hebron, okay? So he's in Hebron now, okay? Jacob had a lot of drama in his life. You remember we talked, you know, he had the issue about the birthright. He had the concern over Esau for years. He finally got all that behind him. He moved to Bethel. You know, God moved him down to Bethel. He blesses him and he renamed him Israel. Remember? And I'm sorry I didn't put up the right. No, that's sort of close to the right map, but I've got another map that I left at home. I'll bring in to go that. It's on the screen covers it. If you can see it, I know it's probably sort of small, but the
You point out Hebron up there?
Hebron is at the first part of the green here.
Okay.
Okay. In just a minute while I'm here, I'll just say is he's going to go up. The brothers are going to be tending the sheep up here in this top right above there. Okay. You know, so you can see they're covering a lot of area. Okay. So if you remember, they'd grown so big, Jacob took an area and Esau went to a different area just so because they had such big flocks and stuff. So and Esau, if you remember from last week, is down in the area way down here. Okay. Down in the area and ended up being, you know, the area right around Petra, you know, beautiful area, which is also the area where Moses went on top of Mount, what is it, Nebo? Is that right? Is that right? Yeah. You know, look over to the promised land, you know, that neat little place because when you go up on that, you can look over, you know, and see Jericho. You can see the Dead Sea and everything from up there. It's really pretty cool to be up that high and see that, you know, how far down it is. Okay, so a lot of drama. You know, she's died doing that. So Jacob sort of, you know, is probably resting. You know what I mean? He's had all of this time. He didn't really manage his wives or his sons to get together. So this is the setting that happens in verse 1 there for you. Verse 2 starts with a story, and I tell you what, I've always called him, you know, and you guys may not agree with me, but I've always thought Joseph was a brat. Okay, and I'm going to go into why on that in just a minute, but you know, he was a daddy's boy, and it showed in everything, and dad let him buy with a lot of stuff. So here he is. What's Joseph doing here?
Tending sheep.
He's tending sheep. Okay. You know, and so he's out there, but what does he say he's doing? Also, not yet. Let's wait on that a minute. Okay. What's he? You know, he's out in the field with 4 of his brothers. Okay, the brothers from the concubines. Okay, so how much older can they be than him? You know, when I used to see this story, I used to think they was a lot older than him.
Okay, closing.
You got to remember is, yet they had 4 brothers before them. Okay, so the most they can be is maybe 3 years. One of them may be 3 years, then you probably have 2, 1 year higher than him. Okay, so you got somebody that's only a couple years older than him. So this issue of, you know, this preferential treatment's even worse because he's not a little bitty kid, which you sort of always had the impression, you know, maybe 10, 15 years difference. Okay, so you've got this kind of thing going on. The oldest is 6 years older than him, but he's not out there right now. So here he feels it's his calling in life to do what?
Tell his father about his brothers.
Tell on his brothers. Okay. So he's telling on Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher is who he's telling on. Okay. Not that big an age difference. He felt it's his calling in life
I'm sorry.
to do that.
Needed to burn.
And
I can't smell it.
Might be a foe.
right, you
It
too.
is.
Let me
It may have been more, it may have been easier than that. They were supposed to be out there helping him with the sheep. and they weren't doing it. And that's why he tattled on them.
Yeah, maybe. I guess the issue is, are they working together or are they working against each other? Okay,
But the father said, "Hey, I don't think what for me." So that's why he got upset.
yeah. But what they did, they don't mention what they did, you know? Don't mention what they did. And dad seemed to approve this kind of thing. You know, you didn't hear him get on to him or anything like that. Well, so it's not working out real well. He sends them all out in the middle of nowhere to work together. But he's got one that's reporting on one, probably under his or whatever. Okay. Now, so there's this enmity going on and things like that. And yeah, and there's some other things that happen in the family that they don't go into details about. He just says, you know, talks about it, but it wasn't these guys that caused it. It was some of the other brothers. So there's all kinds of issues going on, but you know, he's given a bad report to dad, and then they go in and they say, okay, how do you know that he treated him better? Well, it says it's right out that he treated him better because he loved him more than all the rest of them. Okay. And it says because of why? Why does it say he loved him more?
Because
He was born in his old age.
He's born in his old age. Well, you remember I just told you, there's not much difference between him and his brothers. They were born, 12 kids were born in 7 years.
I think it has to do with that it was Rachel's first, and then Rachel's second kind of blames for death a little bit.
Well, I don't know. Some people don't think that Benjamin was born yet. I'm going to go into it in a minute. Well, I think he was probably born during this time. But yeah, is that firstborn of the wife you loved is probably going to get the most love. You know, I mean, it's the firstborn. But, you know, so he's getting preferential treatment, and he goes in and, you know, he says because of his age, you know, but in reality it's not his old age, because, you know, he's had others that are born, you know, within a year of that. Yeah.
One other thing in verse 3, it says he has a multicolored cloak.
Yep. He's
which
going to
is
go
a
in.
symbol of the inheritor and all his father's stuff.
Yeah. And if you look at the Septuagint, it says, and some of y'all's versions will say that. What does it call a robe? It says it's what kind of a robe?
I mean,
Long sleeve robe. Okay. So he's got this special robe that's got these long sleeves that goes all the way down to his ankles. And he's doing that. And, you know, and it almost sounds gaudy, quite frankly, you know, his robe of many colors. And he's sitting there prancing around in this thing amongst his brothers. So because of that, they did what? They hated him. Yeah.
okay. Now, this, I believe this is what the Bible says.
Okay.
Now Israel loved Joseph more than his other sons because Joseph was a son born to him in his old age. And you're just saying that it wasn't his old age.
I'm saying is all the kids were born within 7 years.
He was old when they were all born. What's this old age stuff? I mean, if he was 80
Yeah.
something, he was old.
So it was the last kid born to him when he was up in Laban's, working for Laban, you know, but he was in that 7-year period, remember, because right after this, he left.
They had his kids with his first wife. He couldn't marry Rachel until 7 years, right?
No, he married her 7 days after
7 more days.
Leah.
Okay.
Okay.
7 years.
He had to work for 7 more years, but he married her 7 days after the wedding period was over. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
He got it right away, but he had to pay the 7 years back.
I get that. I'm still stuck on the, in his old age.
Yeah.
He had all of them in his old age.
Exactly.
So why,
What's the big deal with that?
So why is he singling this one out? Is because he didn't seem to recognize the other ones at all. Okay?
How old is old age?
Yes.
Careful there.
When you got 12 kids, it'd probably be right after any of them's time period, right? I know my grandfather had kind of like 13. But it was, for farmers, that was the way. to
That
be
was your
crushed.
workers.
Well, it might have been the way that the brothers were looking at, the other brothers were looking at. You had him in his father's old age, because kids think in terms of parents being old.
Yeah. So I mean, the impression, he loved him, and it says he loved him because it's his son in his old age. So he's using that as his reason. But in reality, he was prejudiced. Okay. He's prejudiced for Rachel, prejudiced for his first son born, Rachel. Okay.
And we had seen that before, or we will see that later with King David too, in preferences for his children, his sons.
Exactly. And how it gets you into trouble is this stuff is going. Now, the lesson tends to focus on Joseph being in trouble, but I'm gonna talk about how these guys reacted is also the thing. Now, Joseph, why do I think Benjamin was born at this point? Some people don't think Benjamin was born yet, because that also, you've got to question, the question is, if Benjamin was born now, why wouldn't Benjamin be the one that's born in his old age? Okay. Benjamin was born, like I said, a little later on when Rachel died close to Bethlehem.
Israel may have blamed Benjamin for Rachel's death, though, too.
But may have, but if you wanted to look at it from a year's perspective, Jacob was 130 when he moved to Egypt. Okay. And Joseph's age was 39, then meaning Jacob was 91 when Joseph was born. Okay. When Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years after that. So Jacob died I was telling you earlier, 130. Jacob died at 147. Okay. Benjamin was likely around 10 years old then. Reason is Joseph was 17 when he sold, 39 when Benjamin came to Egypt. That would make Benjamin 32 to 35 years old if he was, 10, 11-ish, 12 when that happened. Benjamin had 10 sons when he went to Egypt.
Benjamin?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So Benjamin, yeah. Benjamin, when he went to Egypt, was probably 32 to 35 years old, which, because Benjamin had 10 sons, that would make sense, because he'd be that old. If you wait and he hasn't had Benjamin yet, then Benjamin would have been in Egypt when he was 22-ish. Okay. Something like that. So that's where, when you back it up. Now, I didn't want to concentrate that much on that today. So you guys think about that. If you want to look it up and counter it, you can. But I just want you to understand, everything that's going on there and understand that. I looked at it a lot over the weekend just to come in and show you the differences in that and why they were that. So Joseph gave him this robe, did that. It's a slap at the others, and they're having their brother play around. Look at me. I'm Daddy's favorite, in this gaudy robe, prancing around, lording it over the others and stuff like that. And then, and obviously they can't talk to their dad about it. There's not any way to communicate with dad and say, wait a minute, Dad. The oldest boy, Reuben, didn't go in and say, Dad, what's going on here? Why are you causing all these problems with everybody else by making him so special? So resentment, that's going on, all the things with that. So these guys are reacting to all of this. And when something else happens to you and somebody's treating you bad, well, however it is, how you react is still up to you. Okay. And that's the lesson for today. How you react is still within your purview. You don't have to sin because they're sinning. Okay, you don't have to be jealous. You don't have to be hateful. So they took it there. Then Joseph, on top of that, he had a dream, and he could have just kept the dream to himself, right?
But he wore the coat of many colors.
So he had to tell him he's got this coat on, right? He's better than them. It reminds me, I have a niece. We're playing this fishing game, this real fishing game, and she caught some big fish. And so she caught it, she bring it in, and she jumped up, and she's going around the room to all her cousins and uncles and whatever. I'm better than you. I'm better than you. I'm better than you. And I'm better than you. And she went around the whole room, and it was so funny. I forget how old she was, but yeah.
There was evidently some tradition that the Jews believe that dreams all came from God.
Yeah.
So this means God gave him that dream. And then they really
Yeah. They're like, okay, wait a minute here. You're 11th in line, and we're going to be bowing to you. It doesn't go into the dream. Technically, there's two dreams. First dream, it's the wheat that bows down. The second one's all the stars. Okay. And in the second dream, even his dad's star bows down to him. Okay. Now his dad rebukes him on that, but his dad says, I'm going to remember this, and I'm going to think about this a little bit, So his dad's thinking about it a little bit over time. So that's So the culmination of 4 events have happened before we get to the next story. They are, one, him telling dad, which is probably just sort of a normal part of his behavior in life. Okay. The second is the coat. The third one is the dream number 1, and the fourth one is dream number 2. Okay. So at this point in time, these guys can't do it. So the issue of them being mistreated, the bad situation, Joseph and Jacob putting the brothers in a place they never, Jacob never got involved, tended to let the kids do their own thing, the wives do their own thing, so to speak. But they had to decide whether to let temptation in or not. Okay. Whether they had to allow it to sin and do that. Only you can decide how you respond. They chose the wrong response. How do you keep anger and animosity from ruling your life? How do you keep anger and animosity out of your life, or from ruling your life? How do you keep it out? Pray a lot. Okay. All right. Let's go.
One thing, Buster, is try and understand the people that are mistreating you and all, what they may have gone through. Try and put yourself in their shoes, because a lot of times you can't understand. I mean, they're reacting because a lot of times of the way they've been treated themselves.
And they may have had something bad happen, and so all of a sudden their filter's off. They may have a bad filter. I don't know what happened to my friend I was telling you about earlier. I don't know what happened. Everything was going, but something happened at the wrong time, and he didn't know how to handle it. Okay, read the second set of readings.
They said to one another, "Oh, look, here comes the dream expert. So now come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. We can say that a vicious animal ate him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to save him from them. He said, "Let's not take his life." Reuben also said to them, "Don't shed blood. Throw him into the pit in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him," intending to rescue him from them and return him to his father. When Joseph came to the brothers, they stripped off Joseph's robe, the robe of many colors that he had on. Then they took him and threw him into the pit. The pit was empty without water.
Okay. So he didn't give you with the verse before. They saw him coming from a distance. Okay. So they've
That
seen.
color, the colored coat just really lit up.
The, in my mind, I know it doesn't, it probably has nothing to do with this, but I don't know if y'all remember, Elton John used to wear these craziest outfits, and that's what it reminds me of, you know what I mean? It's him and his crazy outfits, kind of thing. So, sorry, hopefully that doesn't mess up your mind too much.
Don't have a fur collar.
Fur collar, and I remember as in a concert once, and he came out with these glasses that had lights on them that shine so bright, you could see him from those glasses. I don't know what kind of effect it had on his eyes, but the lights on the blue glasses just shined out. All the crazy stuff. But so the anger's overcome them. They see from a distance. Okay, so what does their anger do? What does it cause them to do?
They wanted to kill him.
They wanted to kill him. Okay,
There's a lot of bitterness and hatred right there.
a lot of bitterness, a lot of hatred. Has this plan just happened all of a sudden that they said, "Oh, let's just kill him"?
I suspect they've been thinking about it a long time.
Maybe so. I mean, you just don't decide. Generally, you don't decide on an instant just to kill somebody, especially as a group. A person might get so mad that they want to kill somebody and do that. But as a group of 12, well, a little less, you got to get consensus on that, okay? Well, they didn't have total consensus here, but you got Reuben certainly that is saying, it's time to kill him, and everybody seemed to go along with it. Let's throw him in, do that, let's take care of this guy. Okay. So there's been some kind of plan to kill him, and the kill is sort of a violent kind of a death issue here. They didn't want him to die easily here. So kill him brutally, throw him in a cistern, so to speak. A cistern, just a well they dug that's dried up. It's deep enough so that he can't get out. So they wanted to do that. Okay. And then they're sort of funny about it because they say, if we kill him, what does that take care of?
The dream.
Take care of the dreams. See what happens with the dreams now. See us bowing down to you now, buddy. Okay. So, but when Reuben heard it, what did he say?
Not to kill him, don't hurt him, essentially just throw him in the pit.
Okay. That didn't make a whole lot of sense. Just throw him in the pit. Just let him starve to death?
He's gonna come back and get him.
Yeah, but how did the other guys react? I mean, he convinced them to throw him in the pit.
Well, he didn't want them to shed blood.
Yeah.
And there's a difference if you just let somebody die, put them in a pit somewhere like that, versus taking physical action and causing shed blood.
Right.
It was kind of a thing in their belief with shedding blood of, like for sacrifices and so on. It's only under God's control, and direction that they do that. But if he's in this pit by himself and dies because of lack of resources, water and food and stuff, hey, that's not necessarily on them directly like that.
Yeah, they sort of rationalized the whole thing. So they got there, they took his robe, threw him in the pit. What do you think Joseph was thinking about now?
His robe.
Well, they took the robe off of him, right?
Yeah, took his robe off, threw him in the pit. So what do you think? I mean, what's going through his mind?
Well, you don't know how often they've mistreated him in the past like this, just roughing him up and picking on him because of, what's going on. He may think this is just more of the same.
Right?
Yeah.
Also kind of depends on what some of the dreams were. Since we don't really know much about the dreams and stuff, you kind of get hard to say that he didn't kind of see this coming.
Yeah. I mean, you could almost see his brothers taunting him and say, "Hey, did you dream this?" The issue of I think he's in a learning curve here. It's just my feeling. I don't see a whole lot of other people saying anything about it or anything like that, but I've always sort of felt like he's in a learning curve, and he had to go through this experience to grow in the Lord. Okay. Now, the issue is I think because, you know, he was prancing around his coat and the other things that he did and stuff like that, he probably thought, why do I deserve this? What have I done to deserve this? You know, he's sitting in the bottom of the cistern thinking, I just don't understand what's wrong with my brothers. They know I'm better than them. Why are they treating me this way? Okay. I think you probably just, you know, just me thinking, you probably hadn't gotten it yet. And I did. A friend of mine was talking about, you know, and you see these kind of things go on all the time. A friend of mine was telling me about a relative of theirs. They were at a funeral the other day. Okay. And the guy's stepmom came up to her. She said, why won't he call me anymore? Why won't he do this? And she said, well, because you sent him a letter and said you didn't want to talk to him anymore. I did not. She said, yeah, you did. I kept it because I thought it was so atrocious. She said, you're going to have to fix this. And she said, well, I don't remember that. You know, and it's like those kind of things, you know, they haven't spoken in 2 years. And because of those kind of things, and the people are just oblivious to it. So I think this is just me thinking, you know, like I said, I don't see any other literature on it, but that he's probably so full of himself that he just has trouble with it right now. That's okay, because, you know, the issue is when we're going through these things, we have the same problem. We have the same problem wondering why people are not treating us right. Okay. This lady I was telling you about at the funeral, same thing. Why aren't you talking to them? Well, it's because you asked me not to.
And he was probably sitting down there thinking, well, just wait until Dad hears about this.
Right. Boy, Dad is gonna be so mad. They messed up my coat.
He's gonna be mad.
All right, let's hit the third verse here. I know I'm running low. Late.
Judah said to his brothers, what do we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come on, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and do not lay a hand on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers agreed.
Okay. So as we talked earlier, Judas, you know, in the verses in between, they see a caravan out there. Okay. Because Ishmaelites said, okay, hey, let's sell him. Then we don't have the blood on our hands. Okay. Now, obviously, you don't see the verses because in the next set of verses, Reuben comes back to the pit and says, what happened? What happened to him? So you don't know where Reuben is at this point in time, but he came back to rescue him and he ain't there. Okay. So Judas decided to sell him. The other guy said, that sounds good to me. We don't have the blood on our hands and we'll make some money out of it, you know? And so obviously takes care of her brother. We have standards, but they're low standards. It's okay to sell him off into slavery just because he's family, but you know, we're not gonna worry about anything else. We're gonna take care of the little tattletale. He's getting his just rewards. Okay. So
You think they sold the coat too?
Well, don't they
No, they took
dip
it back
the
to the
coat
dam
in like
blood all
blood?
Yeah.
yeah. So now Joseph, when did he realize that God's working in his life? You know, you had a good statement a minute ago. You said, you know, maybe he foresaw this. I don't know, you know, I talked about his other visions, so I'm not sure he had anything yet, but he saw God's blessings because the first one, as we start getting into it, when he's in Potiphar's house, he's always blessed in everything he did. Okay. And they could see that everything he did was done right and stuff like that. So he's learned to work hard and do good. Okay. And God is blessing him in doing that. So he's learned that. So God is working through him to do that. So is this the point he learned? I don't know. I started looking ahead to try to figure that out. At what point, you know, it's just that aha moment where he sees, oh, this God. But we know it happened because we know in Genesis 50:20, he says, as he's talking to his brothers, he said, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. Okay? To bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. Okay? So at some point, he gets that reconciliation. At some point, he stopped feeling sorry for himself. You don't know if it's in the bottom of the pit or while he's on the caravan, going with the Ishmaelites, before he gets sold to Potiphar. Or somewhat in Potiphar's time or whatever. We're gonna get into more of this and stuff like that and doing that. So he eventually saw God's plan and God working. Where do you have, has someone hurt you? Has sibling hurt you something, or somebody done something to you that you're having trouble getting over? There could be bitterness that you just can't get over, that you can't do. Where's that? And at what point, I'd say is you're gonna look up and say, instead of looking down at yourself, look up and say, God, what are you trying to teach me here? And say, what am I supposed to be learning through this versus concentrating on the trial, concentrating on where God is working? Have you seen God work through this? Is it growing in your relationship so that you can do that? So that you can do that. Can you see what God has brought you through so you can start seeing that real purpose in the trial? Sometimes we get through a little bit of bitterness, but we don't get over all of it. You know what I'm saying? Is we'll get through a little bit, but we're still holding on to something. But if we look back, we can see where God has blessed us and has carried us through it. So he's intended on us to get through that bitterness. Just like he did with Joseph. His brothers didn't learn. Okay? But he learned. Okay? He's going to eventually learn. We just don't know when yet. Maybe you haven't gone through something like that, but maybe you have a friend that has. How are they taking it? Is the bitterness overcoming them? How can you help them focus on God working them through this?
The one thing that helped me in this kind of situation was someone guiding me to answer the question, what was your part? What was my part in all of this?
Yep.
About how did I contribute to the problem?
And God probably needed you to go through things so you get where you be. Joseph had something in his plan for that, but he had to be prepared for that. He had to be a slave for a while. Okay. He had to go to do that. He wasn't in the place where he could do that, where he was with his brothers. Okay. God wanted him to do that. God can work through all this, and even through depression, God can work through it. There is no reason in the world that suicide's the answer, ever. Okay? And it's hard for people to see that when all they can do is see the hard things that they're going through. Okay? So pray that the Lord can use the pain that somebody's going through to help produce good with them. Pray with them. And continue to pray for them. Lead them in prayer. Any final thoughts?
After all the difficulties, I hope they learned something.
Yeah, eventually they learned something, but it took them a while. I'll try to keep remembering these dates and stuff like that, because I had to go through the dates to try to understand it all, because I had a false notion that this was, there was a huge difference in years between these brothers. And a lot of that sort of made me think a lot of things differently than what I learned when I started putting all the things together.
So you said something along the lines of the stars bowing down, like his brothers and stuff.
Yeah.
I know, skipping verse up ahead a little bit, but when his brothers come to find that he's alive, they kind of do what they need to do to try to appease their father and bring him back, right? So could that not be seen as them bowing down kind of to him? And then even his father kind of does when he sends his youngest, which is kind of one of the demands of the people to let him go, right?
probably even before that, though. When they walked into his presence, I guarantee you they bowed down before him, even though they didn't know who he was. You know what I mean? So they were bowing there, and certainly there was a humbling in them. When they figured out who he was, it probably like, oh.
Oh, crap.
Yeah. No, the issue of that, the humbling of them over time and realizing how all this works. Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts? All right, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we thank you so much for this lesson. And Lord, let's look at this lesson differently than we're just looking at it as a story of you working. We're also looking at it as teaching us how to see the issues we go through in life and how to see you working through them to get us through them. Lord, we pray that everything that happens in our life, we learn to react in the right way and not sin. Lord, we pray, dear Lord, that we can learn to love in all things, can trust you in all things, and to see you working in all things, and help us, dear Lord, to help others to see the same thing. Your glory and honor, we pray. Amen. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Buster.
Thank y'all.
All right, you guys that question my Saturday, go look up the dates and come back.
Everybody have a good week.
Bye, everybody.